Hey guys, Hammeh here, how's it going? And this is, as the last of, before we move on to bigger and better and who knows what the future may be, things, as promised, part of the 50k celebrations, I did a little AMA, and the other part that I was talking about doing was my life in gaming, the games that made me and things like that. So for the next, let's say 15, maybe 20 minutes, I could go on a lot longer, but I'm going to try to keep it moving. I'm going to talk about the games I've played and the games I've enjoyed in the past and when and the kinds of stuff I've gone through and a little bit of that. So it's going to be part retrospective, part sort of having a look at, you know, where they were at different times in my life and the things I enjoyed about them and the things I didn't enjoy about them, the things sort of maybe I feel about them looking back on them and things as well. So there's a little bit of my life in gaming to get stuck in. You will have to forgive me if some of the dates, some of the years are a little bit mixed up, if they're not all in consecutive order, because some of them overlapped each other quite a bit. For example, if I was playing stuff on console at the time, maybe they were being played when I was playing things on handheld, and then there might have been some PC gaming and things at home as well. So if it's not all in date order, I do apologise very, very much. If you would like to skip from this to other content, the latest Hammeh Overwatch Hero Interaction Lore and Voice Lines is down below, continuing those one a week for next week, and there will be time codes below where you can skip to various games and my thoughts and reminiscences on those, as well as sort of different periods of my life, like when I was at university or things like that. So if you want to jump around and skip around, do have a look in the description below. Right, getting started. Early years, earliest gaming memory was one that someone asked me in the AMA, and the earliest I think I can remember something is, pretty sure it was Elite. It was Elite, and I think it was the Commodore 64, thinking back on it the time-wise. I don't know whether it was a friend's house, a friend's parent or something like that, but this was pretty young. This was probably, I lived abroad for a year or two when I was pretty young, came back, and then it was kind of primary school type age. It would have been primary school type age, and this would have probably been Elite. It was someone trying to land on a space station. And if you played Elite Dangerous now, then you'll know that landing on a space station in Elite Dangerous now with wonderful graphics and wonderful flight sticks and everything can be a bit of a challenge until you get the hang of it, or if you're just bad at landing on space stations like I am when I played Elite Dangerous. As I go through this video, I'll try to throw up some images above to show you everything. Elite, it just had the line drawn effect of the Commodores and Amigas and things at the moment, and it really stuck out in my mind for that reason. So in terms of earliest gaming memory, before moving on to sort of when I was a young kid at that kind of age and it was primary school, the kind of actual stuff I played, well, to start with, I wasn't console, it was more PC. I mean, we didn't have our first home PC as a family for quite a while, but other people around us as a family had sort of consoles and things, and of course it was really the time of the Game Boy. Like, the Game Boy was a big thing when I was sort of young and growing up, and that was Super Mario Brothers on the Game Boy. Played a bunch of that at various points. Did eventually get my own Game Boy a few years down the line, but it was sort of playing on other people's friends' Game Boys and things at the time. Our neighbours at the time had a Mega Drive, and this was very exciting. So that was, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog, playing a bunch of those games, and occasionally I might be invited over. The sons of this family were quite a lot older than me, so that I think there was probably a little element of, well, we're doing a favour to our parents for the next door neighbours, and we're letting this kid have a go on Sonic and not die too much and things like that, not lose all of their lives in their playthrough and things. So yes, I got to have a few goes on Sonic and things, but yes, very much Mario, Sonic, an early sort of console gaming kicked things off for me at that particular time. We then as a family got our first PC, and it was so my dad could do work. It was very much a work-based thing, and it was in the spare room and it was in the study, and we weren't really allowed on it, but it did come, I think, with a game. One of the games was Jurassic Park, I believe. I'm going to try and find some footage of that, throw it up here for you, or at least some screen grabs to jump into. I just remember running around and I couldn't work out what was going on, but I enjoyed it, and it was colourful, and it had 80-bitty music, and it was really, really sort of, and of course it had dinosaurs, and what kid doesn't like dinosaurs, right? I mean, most kids like, I certainly love dinosaurs, a whole bunch, in terms of, you know, those cool things when you're at school. I used to, a bit of a history geek as well, so I used to love history and I used to love dinosaurs, and if you think dinosaurs, it's history meets crazy cool animals, kids' imaginations and all that kind of thing. So yeah, Jurassic Park was most awesome. At that particular time at school, and this is a thing in the UK, and I don't know if in other countries you have an equivalent of this, so do let me know if you do. I mean, I don't know about America or anything, but the BBC, who most people are familiar with as the British Broadcasting Corporation, one of the UK's things known around the world, both through its TV and its news and things, hopefully in a good way. But the BBC used to be pretty good at helping computers in schools, and there was a computer called the BBC Micro, which I'm going to again try and flash up on screen, and you would see these with the 5 1/4. They were either was it 5 1/4 or 5.5 inch old square floppy disks. Again, I'll throw one of those up. Some of you might not have even seen one of those, which is kind of crazy to me, dating myself a little bit here. But yeah, so BBC Micros would be in schools, and in school there was a BBC Micro, and there'll be certain educational games that you could get stuck into. I do remember one called Geordie Racer, which was around helping find a pigeon or catch a pigeon, sort of foiling crimes, all with a slightly educational bent and trying to work out maths problems and various spelling things along the way. And I'll try and throw that up here if I can as well. But that was totally nuts. So there were BBC sponsored, supported computers in schools, as far as I recall, and that you also would occasionally, very very occasionally, if it wasn't doing sort of English or something like that, you could also try some coding. And it was like print hello, and then hello would pop up on the screen. Then you get all excited. That's probably about as far as my coding career went at the time. At home, after when we got our computer, and our computer was a 486 enhanced, I'll have you know, it's a 486 enhanced. There were 386s, and then it went to a 486. I can't remember off the top of me what a 486 was in terms of, let's say, hertz or gigahertz processing power nowadays, but it was tiny. I'm pretty sure it was 2 megabytes of RAM. And the reason I'm pretty sure it was 2 megabytes of RAM was because I think for one of my birthdays, having not checked with my parents, I got SimCity, the original SimCity, and I was devastated when, having got SimCity, we didn't have enough RAM. But RAM at this time was not cheap. 2 megabytes of RAM I think was probably something like £100, and given that my parents were using it for work, they didn't really need this RAM. So I think it was a joint birthday present between me and some of my siblings that we got this RAM eventually, so we could then play SimCity and then also some other things as well. At the time there was also, if you're a soccer for you Americans, football, if you're in the UK, if you're a football fan, you'll be very familiar with, as you guys in the US, if you're into American football, are familiar with Madden, the main name of the main game in the football management, not sort of directly playing, because everyone knows FIFA as being the football soccer game that everyone, where you actually play as the players, like Madden is. But in terms of management games, the one that's probably most well known is Championship Manager, but it's recently become that there's two products. One's called Football Manager. That's by the original people who made Championship Manager, but it was always Championship Manager to start with until there was this sort of split of the brand and of the people who were making the game and things. So what is Football Manager now was Championship Manager back then. And I played a whole chunk of this. I'm going to bring up the cover here so you can have a look. And what struck me was that I think it was on floppy disks, and of course it came with your manual, but the copyright protection for this, the manual had in the corners, it had scores. It had 3 or 4 different scores, like 2-1, 3-2, 5-7. And when the game started, it would say, can you give me the third score from the top on page 50 of the manual? And you'd be like, right, okay, got to open your manual, go through. So naturally, if anyone was copying the floppy disks and pirating it for their friends, they'd also have to write down every single score. So like page 1, here's 3-2, 5-6, 7-8, and all that kind of stuff. So they could actually go and look this thing up. Or you'd have to ring your friend who you might have got the game off and said, I'm about to play Championship Manager. Can you let me know score 3 on page 57 or something like that? How copyright protection has changed in the ages of online DRM and always on and computers connecting to the internet. And yep, that was how they tried to stop people copying, making it inconvenient by making you open your manual and find the score, which was totally funny to me and totally nuts to me in many different ways. That was the Championship Manager days, and this was like my early PC gaming, and this is how me and sort of some of my siblings and things we'd be playing games if we're playing anything on the PC, alongside all that console stuff that I mentioned going on as well. I think the next step change was probably, I'm going to call it the SNES era. It was we never had a NES or anything, played on NES and things on occasion. Said our next door neighbour had a Mega Drive, and then it got kind of to the SNES era, and this was our first, me and my siblings, it was our first console between us. So I have a few sisters and brothers and things like that, so it was kind of a joint present between us all. My parents weren't too keen, alongside the PC, on having a games console as well. They weren't massively sort of up into that. We were also, I wasn't allowed to get a Game Boy. There's actually quite a funny story about a Game Boy. There used to be phone-in competitions after the weather on a particular sort of TV channel in the UK. So before you go to school in the morning, or before I go to school in the morning, the weather would be on this channel. It would be like, oh, and to win a Game Boy, answer this question and ring this number. And because I was pretty young at the time, I didn't realise that ringing that costed money. Right up to the point where I'd been dropped off after school at one of my parents' friend's house, and with some of my siblings, and waiting for our parents to come pick us up for some reason. And then my parents took me aside and said, "Do you know what this number is?" And I was like, "Yes." And it turns out I'd been ringing a premium, like a charged number, to enter this competition, and I can't remember how much it was for. But yeah, I'd racked up, say, like 20 calls into this competition at maybe sort of a few pounds a time. So it wasn't cheap, like for a young kid whose pocket money was probably like, a quid of, a quid a week, or, it's like nothing massive. Do you know what I mean? It was like, wow, my God, how much pocket money I'm going to have to put together to pay off this phone bill. But I learned a lesson that day about premium rate phone numbers and competitions and things like that. Don't want to ring him. Not a good idea. But yeah, that was the extent to which we weren't going to be having consoles. So this SNES between all of us was a big thing, and it was Mario Kart, SNES Mario Kart, original Mario Kart, which was absolutely amazing, and I've loved Mario Kart ever since. So Nintendo, in some way or another, has always been a big part, console-wise, of sort of my life, and it still is, which I can talk about in a bit. I don't have a Wii U. I didn't actually have a Wii, although family didn't play on it and things a bit, and I've always had a portable, so I've got a 3DS XL. Maybe I'll get one of the new ones eventually, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because that can come into a different section, which is quite cool. Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World, Star Fox was so cool, and then when you talk about N64 Lilac Wars as well. Me and my siblings would all sit down and play these games together, and even my youngest sibling, who was a bit too young to understand, and then they realised that it was something that we were all doing, so they wanted to get involved as well. We'd all sit down and play these games. And then the other thing in terms of Nintendo was that, as I mentioned, I lived abroad for a couple of years before coming back to the UK when I was quite young, and at that time, in-flight entertainment, obviously you had your movies and things, so we'd be on a few planes every now and then, not like sort of every 5 minutes, not like international Child of Mystery sort of flying around in crazy planes all the time or anything like that, but just sort of going to see parents and moving out and moving back and things. And one memory that we do have, or I definitely have, is it was either Cathay Pacific or Singapore Airlines, but one of the planes sort of providers, one of the airlines in that part of the world, had SNESes built into their in-flight entertainment. So there were always a bunch of games you could play. One of them was F-Zero, which I have on a SNES in a box somewhere to this day. I've got a SNES with a box with F-Zero, and I love F-Zero so much. It was just speed, simple, easy controls. People still speed run it a little bit nowadays. It's a favourite of some driving game speedrunners. F-Zero on the SNES, and on these long flights, we'd play that. The other was Super Mario World, and the way that you could, like in other Mario games, use warp whistles, take shortcuts behind the back of the levels, then go a secret route to try and complete the game as quickly as possible. So even back then, and this would have been probably, I'm going to say, let's say 20 years ago or so, me and my siblings would try and speedrun Super Mario World. So there you go, game's done quick. I'm sure loads of other people were doing it then as well, many years ago. But yeah, we were trying to speedrun it on an international flight, and I definitely have a big memory of sort of Super Mario World and SNES games in that kind of way, in a really cool way as well. Coming back to when sort of the next stage of things, coming back to home in the UK, sort of having been abroad, there was kind of moving into like a new sort of PC era. Dial-up gaming, online gaming was sort of starting to happen, and this was when I got into real-time strategy, when I got into RTS to start with, and then this would transfer on to sort of this love of StarCraft that I have as well. But a lot of you probably don't know the dial-up noise. Play a little bit of that for you. I know a bunch of you may know it, sort of a bunch of you may not, but if you have never heard, a bunch of you may have never heard the dial-up noise, I know, sure a bunch of you have as well, but yeah, it was dialing up, and it was the having to have two separate phone lines, and obviously most people didn't have two separate phone lines, but you couldn't have dial-up, you couldn't have someone on the internet as someone was on the phone, and of course mobiles were sort of nothing really at this stage compared to the smartphones and things we have now. So if you wanted to be on the online, then no one could get in, if you wanted to be online, then no one could get onto the phone, and they'd have to, dial up your answer machine, and then maybe your parents would get annoyed and say, oh, you've got to get off the internet and things like that. So yeah, it was all kind of crazy, trying to online game at that time. But there were 3 games at this sort of phase, and I played them around about the time they came out, or in the year or 2 they came out. So I'm going to group them in one group. The first was Command and Conquer. Now, Command and Conquer, I think you can download for free. I think EA actually, because EA bought the rights, bought the studio of Command and Conquer, merged it into themselves. I think in the late 2000s, maybe 2010, maybe 2009, EA actually made Command and Conquer downloadable. So I'm going to go look for that, and then if I can find it, I'll put it all in the description below or comments. So you can probably download some of this stuff for free now and play it yourself if you want to give it a go. The Global Defense Initiative against the Brotherhood of Nod, the sort of mysterious cult-like people fighting for the resource which is Tiberium. It was kind of like this ore. I think it landed from space or something, and then it had unique properties. It could give energy. It was a valuable commodity, and it was inevitably, in a real-time strategy game, what you sent your harvesters out to mine, and then that gave you money, and then money you could get units, and then units you could go and smash up your opponent's base or play the campaign. And it had online, so you could play people on dial-up. So there was the Command and Conquer Tiberium series, and then there was also Command and Conquer Red Alert, which is the follow-up to Command and Conquer. It was kind of, I think it was a slightly alternate timeline or something like that, but it was more sort of Cold War style. It was more, instead of the Global Defense Initiative and the Brotherhood of Nod, it was more like the Russians and the Allies type thing going on, that type of vibe. You'd have big mammoth tanks, a very iconic unit in real-time strategy. Before StarCraft and things like this, there was the mammoth tank, huge big red tank. The heavy tanks of the Russians. The Allies would have more like light and medium style vehicles. And I'm hopefully trying to pull up some footage and throw all of this over the top for you so you can have a look at it as well. But you should be able to find one of those games for free. But this was real-time strategy, and when you see StarCraft, or if you guys have played StarCraft, or if you know StarCraft, these were some of the building blocks from which StarCraft came. And from which, things like Warcraft 3 also came if you play Warcraft. Now, I never played Warcraft as a real-time strategy game. I think I dabbled in it occasionally, maybe at friends' houses, but I didn't play it. It's not a game I sat down on my own PC and spent loads of time playing, so I kind of missed out there. Those are available on Battle.net. I'm going to go back and play those and maybe do some Let's Plays on YouTube. I'd like it for the Warcraft lore and story, as well as just enjoying real-time strategy games. But yeah, so Command and Conquer, really important title in terms of surely, inspired sort of things in real-time strategy. And if you look at StarCraft esports and things, the roots of that were definitely in the back, in the beginnings of obviously Warcraft from Blizzard as well, but also Westwood Studios and Command and Conquer. Do check that out. Another fantastic game at the time was Total Annihilation. This looked not cartoony. It was futuristic. It was weird sort of polygons. Again, I'm going to throw some of that up on screen. And another very futuristic real-time strategy game. My dad used to try to play this one, and we'd occasionally try and play it against each other. And he never knew that there was a third level of technology you could get to. So I always used to beat him because I never told him that there was an additional level of building upgrades and unit upgrades that you could go to. So if I played any game against him, so he didn't like this game because he always lost. Because I kept my sort of cunning advantage until I told him one day, and then he beat me. But that's how things go. But yeah, so it's Total Annihilation, and you may have seen that come out again recently on Steam. Total Annihilation was originally a game from many, many years ago, and again this was dial-up and playing on very slow. It was probably 16k, I don't know, 8k, 16k, 32k, and then it was 52 or 54k, like the different steps up of dial-up speed you could have at the time. So a whole bunch of real-time strategy and online gaming and things, and this was all before StarCraft. So really enjoyed those. And then the third was Microsoft's Age of Empires, and I'm sure a bunch of you played Age of Empires because they've released a whole bunch of great games since then. They've released some good Age of Empires, but the original Age of Empires, again, would play it with my dad, and there were cheat codes that you could put in the chat. Pepperoni pizza would give you more food. There was food, wood, stone, gold for certain units. That was the elite resource that you'd need. There wasn't much on the map. You need some of it for very high tech tree, very advanced units. Things like your priests, which could go and convert enemy units in Age of Empires and all kinds of things like that. So yes, and there was also one which I believe was Big Daddy. And if you put in Big Daddy, you get a car with a rocket launcher fighting against archers, camels, Roman legions with swords. So yeah, a little bit OP, just a little bit unbalanced. And I think you could turn off cheats in multiplayer games, and you could play this locally as well over a network cable, I think. So you didn't have to take two different phone lines and dial each other up. One computer dials the other, literally just a direct dial-up connection. between the two computers. And then occasionally, I think if I forgot to turn off cheats, then suddenly, if I was winning or something, occasionally, not all the time, my dad would sort of get to a point, maybe he'd had a long day and he'd type in Big Daddy. And then suddenly this rocket car comes and just starts destroying my entire base. And I was just like, oh, Dad, don't be like that, Dad. The trauma. But yeah, so that's kind of early PC gaming for me. As you can see, the strategy, the sort of championship manager and things. There's this real strong piece of RTS, and I've loved RTS games ever since. And I've always loved StarCraft for that reason. When we sort of come on to StarCraft in a bit, and I could talk for ages on StarCraft in and of itself as well. But let's try to keep things going. So we had, like, after this or alongside this as well, probably I'm going to put sort of say, coming up to kind of secondary school age, let's say it was the N64 era, we had GoldenEye, MarioKart, Lilac Wars. We didn't have an N64, but again, a bunch of our friends, around us sort of did and things. So, we'd sort of play SNES, and our friends would come and play SNES, and then, if someone had an N64, they'd bring their N64 over, and GoldenEye. And one of my siblings, again, as I mentioned, we plugged in a fifth controller at the back. And this sibling has never forgiven us as a family for this, because they thought for a long time that they were actually playing, when in fact they were the fifth controller, the fifth player in a 4-player Mario Kart or GoldenEye game. But yes, so we've moved on from that now. But yeah, they were a little bit upset at the time when they were a kid and they found out. Oh, it makes me and my siblings seem terrible. We did let our little sibling play as well. But yeah, we did have a little bit of a joke of the fifth controller for a while. I mean, it did take my sibling a little bit of time to figure that out. But yeah, Mario Kart, amazing. GoldenEye, I didn't realise this until I saw it on an article on Eurogamer, I think not too long ago, but there's a GoldenEye mod on Steam. There's like a GoldenEye recreated mod on Steam where you can play GoldenEye on PC with competitive servers and things. So I'm definitely going to go check that out. That looks absolutely amazing. GoldenEye is brilliant. Golden Gun mode, where one-shot kills, everyone fights for the golden gun. When one person gets the golden gun, everyone else is trying to kill that person, King of the Hill style. It was really, really exciting and really fun. And then Lilac Wars as well, follow-up to Star Fox, of course, renamed because of some copyright issues, shall we say. And the 4-player deathmatching in that, it was quite simple, because you could basically do a barrel roll, or you could do an Immelman turn. So you could basically just do a loop-the-loop and try and get people off your back that way. You could try and steer left and right, but depending on how beat up their plane was or how new it was, that would be a fairly straight fight. Or you could try and do an Immelman, which is straight along, loop up, sort of do a loop, fly back the other direction, and then flip over. So there were the two different ways in Lilac Wars, I think, that you could pretty much try and avoid people, as well as just barrel rolling and trying to get lasers to deflect off you, and all of the fantastic do a barrel roll memes that have come out of Star Fox and Lilac Wars, and Slippy Toad being the most useless wingman in the history of games, pretty much. Fox, get this guy off me, in his like really sort of squeaky kind of voice crack. I can't get as squeaky as Slippy Toad. Google Slippy Toad, or like annoying Slippy sayings, Lilac Wars or Star Fox or something like that, and you'll get all of these. You'll see how annoying he could be. And that was kind of N64. Throughout all of this period, and indeed into sort of like a bunch of years later afterwards, Pokemon was a big game in my life, and for two reasons. One, it was something that me and my siblings could kind of all play together. I mean, we'd sort of, by this time, many years on, Gameboys had got cheaper. We had like one between us and things, and we'd all play Pokemon together. So we had a Game Boy in the house, and original Pokemon. I think then we had two Game Boys and a link cable between several of us as kids, so we could take turns and play games and sort of team up together and things, and we could battle and things like that. And then we somehow got into the Pokemon trading card game, and this was kind of cool because they did the Pokemon League, and you could go along to your local, at the time it was Electronics Boutique, before it became Game in the UK, it was Electronics Boutique, and they do a weekly Pokemon League, and these kind of things still happen. If you know people who play the Pokemon trading card game, or if you know of the Pokemon trading card game, there are leagues run by people. You can get free promo cards, you can go along and play other people, and we used to go along to this league, and it's still popular now. But I know that Nando's has become a bit of a meme, and even people who from other parts of the world who don't know Nando's as a chicken restaurant, know the phrase a cheeky Nando's, go for a cheeky Nando's. But Nando's just started in the town near us, and they did a leafleting campaign, and it was sort of a come to Nando's and try a free half chicken on us. and they gave you a brown paper bag with like Nando's branding and a card, and it said, bring this in and we'll fill it with a free half chicken for you. Now, whoever was on the delivery route doing this particular promotion for Nando's had clearly got to our house and decided, you know what, I can't be bothered. I mean, if you've ever done a delivery job where you've like done flyers, local papers, there's probably a time where you thought, what if I just put 10 flyers, they're my last 10 flyers, what if I just put these 10 flyers through this last person's letterbox and then I'll go? You might have thought that, you might have not thought that. Maybe you're a better person than me if you've never thought that and you've done that kind of thing. That is totally and utterly possible. But this Nando's delivery person had actually decided to sort of finish their round early, but they put 20 free chicken bags through our door. So it would be going to play Pokemon, and us as kids, we'd all go down and we'd go and play Pokemon cards, and then give my mum a bit of a break and things like that. You know, she'd have a bit of quiet and things, and then we'd all walk back from playing Pokemon cards. I think it was on like a Sunday afternoon or something like that. So we'd walk back from town having done that, and then we could take, and you know, these chicken bags were rationed. You know, these free Nando's bags, hot commodities. So mum might give us a free chicken bag, and then we could go get some chicken on the way back, and then, you know, play Pokemon cards, and then have a bit of a peri-peri chicken, have a cheeky Nando's. And yeah, that was definitely, it was a Sunday thing. It was something that me and all my siblings did together. Both the Pokemon video games, the Pokemon trading card games. One of my siblings got very good at the Pokemon trading card game. I kind of helped them out. I was okay. I won a championship or two, sort of at adult level, sort of professor level as it was called. I did my professor qualification, as some of you have sort of seen before in other videos. I judged some tournaments. One of my siblings won a trip to the World Championships to represent the UK over in Seattle, it was at the time. So we went to Seattle and I helped judge part of the World Championships, and my sibling played, and there's some great photos somewhere around in our family albums of me and my sibling and giant Pikachus and giant Pichus and things as well, all in the big suits and things. And yeah, really, really good memories from Pokemon as well, in terms of the things that we did together and things like that as well. And I still play Pokemon now. I love my 3DS. I've actually got a streaming 3DS. Maybe at some point, obviously, because there's the new 3DS, the new 3DS and the new 3DS XL, and games that specifically only work, I think, or are optimized. I think they actually only specifically work on the new 3DS or new 3DS XL. So at some point, my 3DS, my streaming 3DS, is an old 3DS. It's like the first 3DS. So at some point, I'm not going to be able to play those games or stream them, which is a bit of a shame. But I think for most stuff, I can still stream it on there, no problem whatsoever, which is really, really cool. So I could always stream some 3DS stuff in the future. Just an option. Can always do videos and things as well. It's kind of sat there, maybe a little bit more unused than it should have done. But yeah, Pokemon, 3DS, Gameboy, and all stuff. You know, a big part of our lives for sure, and really good memories with those. And I'm still playing Oras, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire. Well, I'm talking for half an hour now, guys. I hope you're still with. If you're not still with, sorry about the length of time. Just need a little bit of a drink.